In 1545, Spanish conquistadors discovered something that would change the world forever: a mountain in what is now Bolivia. Except this wasn't just any mountain. This was Cerro Rico, the Rich Mountain, the largest deposit of silver ever discovered in human history. For the next 100 years, this single mountain would produce half of the world's silver, millions of pounds of pure silver. So much silver that ships crossing the Atlantic couldn't carry it fast enough. Spain became the richest empire on earth. They controlled territories on every continent, built the most powerful navy in history, funded wars across 3 continents. The sun literally never set on Spanish territory. And then they went bankrupt, not once, 6 times. 1557, 1560, 1575, 1596, 1607, 1627, 6 bankruptcies in 70 years, despite having unlimited money. How was that even possible? Because Spain learned the hardest lesson in economics, a lesson that took 150 years and cost them an empire. Money isn't wealth. And when you flood the world with money, you don't get richer, you get poorer. This is the story of how unlimited money destroyed the Spanish Empire, and why that same pattern is destroying currencies right now. To understand how Spain destroyed itself with money, you need to understand what the world looked like before 1545. It's 1400. Europe is fragmented, dozens of kingdoms, city-states, and principalities all competing for power. England and France are locked in the 100 Years' War. The Holy Roman Empire controls Central Europe. Italian city-states dominate Mediterranean trade. And money? Money is metal. There's no paper currency, no central banks, no monetary policy. Money is literally coins made of gold or silver. The value of the coin is the metal. 1 silver coin equals 1 ounce of silver. This is important because it means money supply is limited by how much gold and silver you can actually dig out of the ground. European silver production in 1400 is modest, maybe 20 tons per year, from German and Bohemian mines. That's it. That's the entire money supply for a continent of 70 million people. Credit exists. Banking exists. Italian families like the Medici lend money to kings and merchants, but the actual money backing everything, that's metal in vaults. Spain in 1400 is a rising power. Ferdinand and Isabella just united the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon. In 1492, they complete the Reconquista, driving the last Muslim rulers from Granada. That same year, they fund Christopher Columbus to sail west. And Columbus doesn't find a route to Asia. He finds something better. He finds the Americas. Over the next 50 years, Spanish conquistadors carve out an empire. Hernan Cortez conquers the Aztec Empire in 1521. Francisco Pizarro conquers the Inca Empire in 1533. Spain now controls Mexico, Central America, Peru, and Chile. These aren't just territorial conquests. These are resource grabs. The Spanish are looking for gold, and they're finding it. Aztec gold, Inca gold, flowing back to Spain in treasure ships. But gold is rare. Even the Aztecs and Incas didn't have that much. By 1540, the initial gold rush is slowing down. Spain needs more revenue to fund their growing empire, more money to compete with France and England, more metal to mint more coins. And that's when they find it. 1545, high in the Andes Mountains, 15,000 feet above sea level, a place called Potosi, the Rich Mountain. According to legend, an indigenous prospector named Diego Hualpa discovered the silver by accident. He was chasing a llama up the mountain and grabbed a bush to steady himself. The roots pulled free, revealing pure silver ore underneath. Whether that story is true or not doesn't matter. What matters is what happened next. Spanish authorities realized immediately what they'd found. This wasn't a vein of silver. This wasn't a deposit. This was an entire mountain of silver. Tests confirmed it. Cerro Rico contained the purest, richest silver ore ever discovered. You could literally break off chunks of rock and find pure silver inside. No complex extraction needed. Just break the rocks, melt down the ore, and mint coins. Spain moved fast. By 1546, the Spanish crown had established Potosi as an imperial city. Indigenous laborers were conscripted under the mita system. This was forced labor, barely different from slavery. Workers were required to spend months at a time in the mines, often dying from the brutal conditions and altitude. The operation scaled up fast. By 1550, Potosi had 5,000 residents. By 1570, 30,000. By 1600, over 160,000 people lived in Potosi. That made it one of the largest cities in the entire world. Bigger than London, bigger than Paris, a city built on a single industry, silver, and the production numbers were staggering. Between 1550 and 1640, Potosi produced over 45,000 tons of silver. That's not ounces, that's tons. Multiply that by current silver prices, and you're looking at over $30 billion worth of silver in today's money from one mountain over 90 years. But this isn't about modern prices. This is about what that silver did to the Spanish economy. And to understand that, you need to understand what happened to the money supply. Remember, in 1500, total European silver production was about 20 tons per year. By 1590, Spanish America alone was producing 200 tons per year, 10 times the previous world production, all of it flowing to Spain. Spain had just turned on a money printer, a literal money printer. They could turn rocks into coins that every kingdom in Europe would accept as payment. They had unlimited money, and Spain's leaders thought this made them rich. They were catastrophically wrong. The silver arrives in Seville. Treasure fleets cross the Atlantic twice a year, protected by warships against pirates and rival nations. The ships dock, the silver is unloaded, and Spain starts spending. And boy, do they spend. First priority, military expansion. King Charles V and his son Philip II have ambitions. They want to control Europe. They want to crush Protestantism. They want to dominate global trade. All of that requires armies and navies. So Spain builds the Spanish Armada. 130 warships, the most powerful navy in the world. Thousands of sailors and soldiers. This doesn't come cheap. But Spain has silver, so they pay for it. Spain is also fighting wars, constantly. The Italian wars against France, the Dutch revolt starting in 1568, naval battles against the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, attempted invasions of England and Ireland, military interventions in France, supporting Catholics in the European religious wars. Spain is fighting someone, somewhere, basically all the time. And wars are expensive. Soldiers need pay, supplies need purchasing, fortifications need building. But Spain has silver, so they pay for it. At home, Spain is funding a cultural golden age. This is the era of Cervantes writing Don Quixote. The painter El Greco is working. Velázquez will be born into this era. Architecture flourishes. Philip II builds the massive El Escorial palace complex outside Madrid. Cost? 6.5 million ducats, an astronomical sum. But Spain has silver, so they pay for it. The Spanish nobility is living lavishly, importing luxury goods from across Europe and Asia. Italian silk, French wines, Flemish tapestries, Chinese porcelain. Spanish aristocrats are buying everything. And Spain has silver to pay for it all. By 1580, Spain looks unstoppable. They control the Philippines and Asia. They control most of South and Central America. They control parts of Italy. They control the Netherlands. They are the dominant power in Europe. This is the peak, the absolute zenith of Spanish power. And that's when the cracks start showing. Because something strange is happening. Despite all this silver, despite all this money, Spain is getting poorer. Prices are rising fast. In 1500, a bushel of wheat in Castile cost about 2 reals. That's 2 silver coins. By 1550, the same bushel cost 4 reals. By 1600, 8 reals. By 1650, 12 reals. The price of wheat multiplied 6 times in 150 years. That's an average inflation rate of about 1.2% per year. Doesn't sound like much, right? Except wages didn't rise as fast. A laborer in 1500 could buy 50 bushels of wheat with 1 month's wages. By 1600, that same month's wages bought 25 bushels, half as much. Spanish people were getting poorer despite their empire having more money than any nation in history. This didn't make sense to anyone at the time. Economics as a science didn't exist yet. Adam Smith wouldn't write The Wealth of Nations until 1776, 200 years in the future. Spanish leaders looked at rising prices and thought, we need more money to pay these prices. And they had more silver, so they minted more coins. This made the problem worse because what Spain didn't understand was that they weren't getting richer. They were causing inflation. And inflation was destroying them from the inside. Despite all the silver, Spain has a problem. They're spending more money than they're taking in. Even with Potosi producing 200 tons of silver per year, it's not enough. Why not? Because wars are expensive. Maintaining the Armada is expensive. Running a global empire is expensive. And the Spanish government is incompetent at collecting taxes. So Spain borrows money. They borrow from German banking families like the Fuggers. They borrow from Italian bankers in Genoa. They borrow from Dutch merchants. The interest rates are high. 15%, 20%, 25%. Lenders know Spain is risky, but Spain keeps borrowing because they figure the silver will cover it eventually. It doesn't. King Philip II inherits the throne in 1556. He immediately inherits 20 million ducats in debt from his father. That's an astronomical sum, more than Spain's annual revenue. Philip keeps borrowing to pay the interest on previous loans. This is the classic debt spiral. Borrow to pay interest, borrow more to pay that interest. The debt grows faster than the silver can pay it down. By 1557, Spain is paying 2 million ducats per year just in interest, not paying down the principal, just interest. And then Philip realizes he can't pay. On September 1st, 1557, Philip II makes an announcement. Spain is defaulting on all debts, all payments suspended. Creditors are told to renegotiate at lower interest rates or they get nothing. This is the first Spanish bankruptcy. It's a shock to European financial markets. The Fugger banking family, which had lent heavily to Spain, is nearly destroyed. They survive, but never fully recover. Other banks collapse entirely. And what does Spain learn from this? Nothing. Within 3 years, they're borrowing again. The cycle continues. 1560, 3 years after the first bankruptcy, Spain defaults again. Same pattern. Too much debt, too much interest, not enough silver to pay it. 1575. Third bankruptcy. Philip II has been borrowing to fight the Dutch revolt. The war in the Netherlands is bleeding Spain dry. Thousands of soldiers, constant battles, and no end in sight. The debt becomes unpayable. Default. 1596. Fourth bankruptcy. Philip II has just died. His son, Philip III, inherits yet another debt crisis. Spain tried to invade England in 1588 with the Armada. It failed. 130 ships left, 67 returned. The cost was catastrophic, and they couldn't afford to rebuild. Default. 1607, fifth bankruptcy. Philip III is incompetent. His advisors are incompetent. Spain is still fighting in the Netherlands, still fighting France, still maintaining a global empire. The silver still flows from Potosi, but it's not enough. Default. 1627, sixth bankruptcy. Spain is exhausted. The 30 Years' War has begun. Spain is backing Catholic forces across Europe. The costs are insane. Silver production from Potosi is declining because the easy surface ore is gone. Deeper mining is more expensive and dangerous. Default. 6 bankruptcies in 70 years. Think about what that means. Spain had unlimited access to money. They controlled the largest silver mine in history. They had treasure fleets crossing the Atlantic twice a year, and they still couldn't pay their debts. How? Because they made a fundamental mistake. They thought silver was wealth. They thought having more money meant being richer. They were wrong. And the reason why reveals one of the most important lessons in economic history. Here's what actually happened. When Spain flooded Europe with silver, they increased the money supply. But they didn't increase production. They didn't build more factories. They didn't grow more food. They didn't manufacture more goods. They just added more money. And when you have more money chasing the same amount of goods, prices rise. That's inflation. Think of it this way. Imagine a simple economy with 100 coins and 100 loaves of bread. Each coin buys 1 loaf. Simple. Now imagine you suddenly add another 100 coins, but you still only have 100 loaves. What happens? Each loaf now costs 2 coins. The people holding coins didn't get richer. The coins just became worth less. You need more coins to buy the same amount of stuff. That's exactly what happened to Spain. Between 1500 and 1650, Spain increased Europe's silver supply by over 300%. But Europe's production of goods, wheat, clothing, tools didn't triple. It barely increased at all. So prices tripled. Historians call this the price revolution. It's one of the most significant economic events in European history, and Spain was at the center of it. But here's where it gets worse for Spain. Spain wasn't making things, they were buying things. Spanish manufacturing couldn't compete with French, Dutch, and English manufacturers. Why? Because Spanish prices were higher. Spanish labor was more expensive because food was more expensive because inflation. So Spanish consumers bought imported goods. They bought French wine, Dutch cloth, English tools, Italian silk, and they paid for it with silver. The silver flowed into Spain from the Americas. Then it flowed right back out to the rest of Europe to buy goods. Spain became a middleman. They controlled the silver, but they didn't control the wealth. The wealth was in France, England, and the Netherlands. Because those countries were making things and selling them to Spain, Spain had the money. Everyone else had the factories, the farms, the actual productive capacity. And productive capacity is real wealth. Money is just a medium of exchange. Spain forgot that. By 1600, Spain had almost no manufacturing. Their agriculture was declining because labor was going to the mines or the military. They were dependent on imports for almost everything. They were rich in silver and poor in everything else. The final irony? The countries that became truly wealthy during this period, England, the Netherlands, France, didn't have silver mines. They had industries. They sold goods to Spain for Spanish silver. Then they used that silver to fund their own development. Spain gave them the money, and they used it to surpass Spain. By the 1600s, Spain is in terminal decline. Silver production from Potosi is falling. The easy ore is gone. Deeper mining requires more infrastructure, more labor, more cost. The mines are less profitable. The wars continue. The Dutch revolt drags on for 80 years. 80 years. Spain pours money and soldiers into the Netherlands and gains nothing. In 1648, they finally give up. The Peace of Westphalia recognizes Dutch independence. Spain just lost the Netherlands after 80 years and millions of ducats. The Spanish Armada, that symbol of Spanish naval dominance, after the 1588 defeat against England, Spain never fully rebuilds it. They can't afford to. Their economy is shattered. At home, Spanish industry is dead. Spanish agriculture is struggling. The population is declining. Plague, war, and emigration to the Americas have reduced Spain's population from 8 million in 1600 to 7 million by 1650. The Spanish Empire is fragmenting. Portugal, which had been united with Spain since 1580, rebels and regains independence in 1640. Catalonia rebels, Naples rebels, Sicily rebels. Spain is fighting internal revolts while still trying to maintain external wars. By 1650, Spain is no longer a first-rate power. France is rising. England is rising. The Netherlands is dominant in trade. Spain is a shadow of what it was. And Cerro Rico, the mountain that started it all, it's still there, still producing silver. But Bolivia, the country that inherited it, is one of the poorest nations in South America. The silver curse lasted 400 years because silver isn't wealth. It never was. Now let me show you why this matters today. The United States isn't mining silver, but it's doing something functionally identical. It's printing money. In 1971, President Nixon took the United States off the gold standard. Before that, every dollar was theoretically backed by gold. After 1971, dollars were backed by nothing, just trust in the US government. The US now had the same power Spain had in 1545. They could create money from nothing, and they've been using that power. Since 2000, the Federal Reserve has increased the money supply by over 700%. During COVID alone, from 2020 to 2021, they printed over $4 trillion. That's a 25% increase in the money supply in 18 months. Sound familiar? Spain flooded Europe with silver. America is flooding the world with dollars. And the results? Also familiar. Inflation hit 9% in 2022, the highest rate since 1981. Food prices up 25%, housing up 40%. Real wages, adjusted for inflation, have barely moved since the 1970s. Americans have more dollars, but they can't buy more stuff, just like Spain. Manufacturing. America has lost millions of manufacturing jobs since 2000. They've moved to China, Mexico, Southeast Asia. America imports more than it exports. The trade deficit in 2023 was $770 billion. America has the money. China has the factories. Just like Spain had the silver and England had the factories. Debt? America's national debt is $36 trillion. The annual deficit is over $1.7 trillion. The interest payment on that debt is now $1.2 trillion per year. That's the largest single line item in the federal budget. Larger than defense, larger than Social Security. America is paying more in interest than it spends on its military. Spain went bankrupt 6 times. America hasn't defaulted yet. But the debt is growing faster than the economy. The interest is growing faster than revenue. The math doesn't work. And here's the uncomfortable question. Is America in 1550 right now, at the peak of power? Or are we in 1620, beginning the decline? Spain didn't know they were declining until it was too late. They thought the silver would last forever. Does America think the dollar will last forever? Because history suggests otherwise. Every empire that gained unlimited access to money eventually destroyed itself with that money. Rome debased the denarius, mixing copper with silver to create more coins. Inflation exploded, the empire collapsed. Spain flooded the world with silver. Inflation destroyed them, the empire declined. Weimar Germany printed marks to pay war debts. Hyperinflation destroyed the currency. The nation collapsed into chaos. Zimbabwe printed Zimbabwean dollars. Hyperinflation reached billions of percent. The currency became worthless. And now America is printing dollars. The pattern doesn't care about your technology. It doesn't care about your military strength. It doesn't care if you think you're different. The pattern cares about mathematics. When you increase the money supply faster than you increase production, you get inflation. When you get inflation, you lose purchasing power. When you lose purchasing power, you get poorer, no matter how much money you print. Spain learned this lesson over 150 years. It cost them an empire. How long will it take America to learn? Spain had a mountain of silver. They thought they'd won the economic lottery. They spent like they were rich. They fought endless wars. They borrowed without limits. They lived beyond their means. And 150 years later, the silver was gone. The empire was gone. The wealth was gone. Because they confused money with wealth. Money is paper. Money is metal. Money is numbers on a screen. Wealth is production. Wealth is what you can build. Infrastructure, manufacturing, agriculture, innovation, skilled labor. Spain stopped building. They just spent silver. And when the silver couldn't pay the debts anymore, there was nothing left. The lesson is brutal but simple. You can't print your way to prosperity. You can't spend your way to wealth. You can't borrow your way to power. Spain tried. It destroyed them. If you learned something from this, hit that subscribe button. Because I'm breaking down every empire that made this same mistake. Rome, Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe. The pattern repeats, and the only way to avoid it is to recognize it. Drop a comment. What year do you think America is at in Spain's timeline? 1550 at the peak, 1600 in decline, 1640 at collapse. Next video, we're covering Rome and the denarius. Same pattern, different metal. 2,000 years ago, history doesn't repeat. But the pattern never lie.